Bartail has been one of the persons who's watched all the shows. I talk to him on a regular basis in the EverQuest Next IRC channel.
What we saw with, Kunark for EQ2, you did those 400 quests, you did all the content, and at the end of it, the world wasn't changed.
Yeah, I'm Phantom X. I do social media and write articles for EQ Nexus.
For the Fall of Bastion, there was a very definite, okay, this is where your story is going to fit into the world.
Listen, fluffy looking bear. Thank you. Listen, I went and I killed a dragon, and then 2 drops of whiskey hit my face, and I willed this manly beard into cow was raising. Yes.
Hello and welcome to EverCast, episode number 58, which we have titled Hi, Elf-Esteem. That's thanks to Flatus. Hi, we are in EverQuest Next and Landmark podcast, connecting gamers to the game they play. We come at you live every Sunday, 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, at twitch.tv /EverCast_show, something like that. And Kailas laughs and throws me off a little bit. So thank you for joining us this evening as we talk a little bit about elves and elves in the world of Norath in EverQuest Next. I am one of your weekly hosts, Tanlin. With me are the other 3 weekly hosts. I'll give them just a second to say hi and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kai. I'm his wife. Tanlin's wife.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I am not Tanlin's wife.
Hi, I'm Flatus.
Also not Tanlin's wife.
I was hoping he was gonna say it, but
I was too.
Oh wait, you mean not your wife? I thought it was your mistress. Not,
I
didn't
thought that
say your wife.
5 minutes in, guys. 5 minutes in, we've already devolved into shenanigans.
I call shenanigans.
Our beers in our lock at night.
Okay,
We talk about gaming sometimes.
Gaming, most of the time we try to stay on track of talking about gaming and a little bit of MMOs in general, but more often than not we try to keep it on Landmark and EverQuest Next. It's one of the things that we get to talk about this week is that there has been a whole lot revealed about the elves of the Norath in EverQuest Next. We got, well, not a whole lot revealed about them. We got to see their pictures and the building, their pictures of their building, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
So tonight, I am not drinking alcohol because a glass this large would make me tipsy as sin. I am drinking Martinelli's sparkling cider.
Me? I guess I'm drinking this giant tiki drink that I made for myself. There's a lot of orange juice in here. I don't think it's a lot of alcohol. It's just more orange juice.
Is that blended ice in there though? Is it a slushy?
No, I used crushed ice. I crushed ice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's got this a liqueur called Liquor 43.
You could drown a pixie in that.
Huh?
You could drown a pixie in that. You absolutely could. Probably 3 pixies. It's using Liquor 43, which is a liqueur from Spain, and it's made mostly with vanilla and an orange peel.
Oh,
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know about it, but if you know, go get it. Liquor 43 and OJ is probably really delicious, and it's super sweet. It's almost like nectar. It's just a sweet like nectar.
The drowned pixies.
How long do you see the... Alright,
Pixies are not tea bags!
I was gonna say, how long do you seep them in there? But again, because I like consistency, flavored water in a plastic cup. This is...
And because he also doesn't like alcohol.
No, I don't dislike alcohol, I just don't drink it. So, going into ECAST news, first thing to tell everybody about is that if you go to the eqnext.de, that's the German EverQuest Next fan site, one of the active Landmark and EverQuest Next community members, Trelawnist, there's a 3 in there, so it's kind of hard to find it, but he goes by Trelawnist. Him and his team over on that website put together an interactive map of Norath for EverQuest Next. I highly recommend that you go out there and check it out because it looks really cool. Next little bit of EQ Next, or EverCast news. If you watch the workshop show, they mentioned that they are going to possibly go and check out the different swap meets and give feedback on the items that they see in the swap meets, so that it's not like an official seal of approval from the developers, but it's kind of like an unofficial, this is what we like, and we think that this is a good prop or template that you can use to build your own, elf talkish empire type structure. And I think that's really cool. So after the workshop show, if they do another one and they talk about it, I would like to get a list of all of the different swap meets in Landmark and that are specifically for elf buildings, and get that out to you guys so that you guys know who and where to go to get like templates to add to your building and maybe inspire you a little bit. One of the suggestions that Lucy had before the show was to, like, if you throw something up on the gallery, if everybody tags it with like elf template or elf swap meet, something that is readily, you can search and find it, and let everybody know where the swap meets are at in Landmark.
That's just a little thing that we started doing in my guild, actually, is everybody in the guild who remembers to do it tags their claim with Sealand so we can all find each other. It's just easy, to use that feature for your own benefit, really.
So the next little bit of ECAST news, stepping away from like Landmark and EverQuest Next, Morgard, who helped write all of this back history for the Takish Empire and the lore of Norath, he was laid off shortly after Daybreak became Daybreak, after they were purchased from Sony. But Morgard, our good friend, active member of the lore community, was hired by Blizzard to work on World of Warcraft. So, woo!
Wonder what he's going to be doing there.
Writing.
Lore?
Yeah.
Maybe he'll bring the Sunwell back where it's supposed to be.
You know what? Maybe we should tweet at them. Like, now that you've shown all of this love to the elves of Norath, could you show a little to the Blood Elves in World of Warcraft? That'd be nice. Can we get Silver Moon City updated so that you can actually fly in it?
Can we stop screwing with the lore? Can we stop that?
Yeah. Time traveling, nix that. No more, ever again.
They've officially jumped the shark.
They sure did.
Yep. Next bit of ECAST news. There is no show next week for Memorial Day weekend. Have fun. For me, it's an extra long weekend. I have that Friday beforehand off as like one of my normal Fridays off. I have that Monday off because it's the holiday. I may even take Tuesday off. It's going to be a nice 5-day stay.
I thought you did take Tuesday off.
What's that?
I thought you did take Tuesday off.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be a nice little staycation for me. I'm going to game.
I was gonna say Tails in the game is so hard.
He's gonna have 5 days of listening to wah 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 trash wah 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 wah.
Okay.
The wife.
Oh. Take out the trash, do the dishes.
Wah, 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 do the dishes, wah, 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 deal with the trash.
The honey-do list.
The honey-do list.
I make more of the list on things to get done around the house than she does. That's the thing. What about you guys? What do you guys plan on doing for Memorial Day weekend? You guys have any plans? And in chat, got anything going on?
I'm gonna make a.
Go ahead, Kai.
Lucy.
Someone has to go first.
I nothing really. I might actually sit down and watch YouTube videos so I can learn to build.
I'm gonna make a pretty princess dress out of velvet.
Oh. I will be
Not
watching
even
YouTube
kidding.
videos, wearing a pretty princess dress, and I'm throwing a barbecue next to them so my friends can
Oh,
come over.
nice.
Yeah.
So,
Gladys, I bet we could wear the same clothes. I mean, if you like pretty princess dresses.
I'll do anything once.
And I was just gonna say that I have some cool appetizer recipes that I could give you, but I wins for generosity.
Do they include fairies?
No, they do not. And you shut up, chat. Fairies are friends, not food.
So the after Memorial Day weekend, we are going to come back and we're going to focus on the Talkish buildings, the Elves of Norath buildings. So this show, we're not going to talk so much about the buildings that we have found in the style guide and in the landmark posted on the forums. We're going to come back after the Memorial Day weekend break, and then we're going to show them off a lot more of them. And we may have a community guest. We're still working on that. So stay tuned for that, and we'll let you know. Is that it for ECast News? Anybody else got anything? All right. Jumping in. Elves. Elves, and what are elves? We wanted to frame the conversation a little bit along the lines of we all have ideas of what is and what is not an elf or elf-ish. And they all vary between the four of us and between everybody who's listening to this or watching on YouTube or following along in chat. We all have slight variations of it. It's a lot like the whole vampire thing, like, do vampires, can they go out in daylight? Are they undead? Do they cast a reflection? Do they have to sleep on the soil of their homeland? Like, if you look at all of the different myths and legends surrounding vampires, it's like you can argue and debate what makes a vampire. And so we thought that we would jump into the show and talk a little bit about what we come up with as defining characteristics of the elves, period. Doesn't have to be in Norath, doesn't have to be in any other MMO out there, but just what are the defining characteristics that make something an elf? We've got a list that we're going to go through, and we hope that, like, if you are following along and you have ideas, that you throw them out in chat, and we can, talk about that as a little bit. One of the things that I kind of want to point out, though, is that Papa Tolkien and Dungeons and Dragons, those two things right there, they took a lot of folklore and catapulted it into popularity. And so when we are talking about elves, one of the things that we have to consider is that, like, if you go back before there was Dungeons and Dragons and before there was Tolkien's, elves meant a lot more things than they mean right now in fantasy writing right now. And that's why people talk about, like, the Keebler elves. We're talking about the Santa's elves living at the North Pole. And then, like, throwing it back even further to, like, the Norse, their poetry, which it talked about the elves being quite a bit different than what we understand as elves after Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings and popularized them to such a large degree. So we're gonna pretty much talk about like the post token and the post Dungeons and Dragons elves, even though we're going to acknowledge, like right now here, like I'm doing right now, that there are other myths and folklore for elves that exist out there that are just as valid, but they don't seem to be put into MMOs the same way.
So are you asking what we consider elves?
We got the list of key characteristics. You want me to throw out the first one on the list?
Sure.
Pointed ears.
Well, that's sort of a big red speeder.
But we all agree that that elves have to have pointy ears. It's one of their key defining physical characteristics. And then Kylest and I, we were talking about this a little bit the other night because we had been watching Defiance, and we keep looking at the Castathan race in Defiance, and every time we see the Castathans, we're like, those are like they're elves. They're elves in everything but name, except they don't have pointed ears.
They don't.
Do you think that makes them less elf-like? Do you think that because they don't have pointed ears, they can't be considered in the conversation of being elves?
Well, they're not really elves, so yes.
Of course they're not really elves, because elves don't really exist. That's kind of beside the point. It's like...
But even the show doesn't call them elves. That's what I was meaning.
Right.
They're not actually elves.
But when we talk about like the other characteristics that we think of when we think of elves, and we can get to that a little bit later, but they have some of the other characteristics that we find essential as part of an elf. They have the arrogance. They have a very concrete caste system where there's nobility and there's
they don't have the important ones.
Yeah. Oh, so the pointed ears are that important?
Yeah. The pointy ears and the long life are sort of, yeah. I would put those two characteristics of elves above all others for right now. With the reservation of being able to amend that statement later, should other evidence prove to be more important.
I think that visually, if you see a race with pointed ears, immediately your brain thinks elf. So it's
Troll.
That sort of integral. But I think that you can say that something is very elfish, or this is somebody's take on elves, if they don't have pointed ears.
Yeah, see, this is I'm going to throw, since we brought it up, I'm going to throw out a picture that we put together of different familiar faces, faces from television, and what we considered like, well, what do we think about these as possibly being elves? I'm going to throw it up there right now. On the far left, we have Datak Tar from the show Defiance that Kylest and I were just talking about. He has that fair white hair and the pale skin, but he has no pointed ears.
For all of you Whovians, he played Vincent Van Gogh in the episode Vincent and the Doctor.
That is correct. The actor that played Datak Tar played Vincent Van Gogh in the Doctor Who episode. Next to him is an elf from Hellboy 2, and I forget the name of that elf in that movie, but they did call them elves, and I wish that I had grabbed a screenshot of this prince's father, because his father had kind of like the tree branch and antler crown that looked very much like the elf standing right next to him, which is the elf King of Mirkwood with the crown of branches, and I forget his name too. Other than he's Legolas's father. Do you know his name? I'm getting the nasty look from Kylest here. What's his name? Yeah. What is it?
It's Prince Nuada.
Oh, from Hellboy 2.
Yeah, Prince Nuada, and there's his sister, Princess Nuala.
Right.
Wow.
And I have pictures of her on the next screen. There, she is on the far left. Next to her is a Castathan from Defiance. That's Stamatar. Then on the far right.
Ask Tanlin how hot she is.
No, let's not. Let's focus in on the elves. And then among the females on the far right, we have Gladriel from the Lord of the Rings movie, and the one that I haven't identified, obviously, is the female elf that they put in the style sheet. So there are the females, and there are the men. And again, I'll point out that the Castatans don't have pointed ears, but they might be considered elves in any other way you look at it. So, Flatus, where do you weigh in on this? Do elves have to essentially have pointed ears?
I guess not, because I mean, there's always the chance that, you know, something happens and they have no pointed ear.
Well, I'm talking about like not a defect or
what a horrible war story for an elf. I lost my ears in the war.
Well, I think there was a story that was somebody collecting elf ears.
There was.
Yeah.
I guess the ears kind of signify, like, usually when I see a fantasy picture, I usually know what an elf is, because long pointy ear, thin, the high cheekbone face, the pointed jaw. Like, I kind of like, that's an elf. I know that with the pointy ears and this. The longevity of life is kind of a given.
Yeah, right. That's,
and I think the one we haven't talked about yet is the thin, tall, and great, like the graceful elegance. I've anytime you see an elf, like, and yes, Legolas always was in combat and stuff, but he held himself of I like very, like, anytime he fought was very smooth, and there wasn't like he went in there like a boss, like he knew he was an elf going into combat. So I didn't want to bring out the Spock card already, but Spock.
No.
We can hold off though.
No. Well, you talked about like the second characteristic that we listed on our list was longevity. One of the things that we all, like, when we were brainstorming, elves live long lives. Period. That was one of the ones that we all kind of agreed on, and that's where, when we're talking about the elves or the Castathans from Defiance, are they elves? And I'm like, well, they don't have the long life. They're just, as far as we know, they don't live long lives, and we see old Castathans in the show Defiance all the time. So it kind of, it doesn't feel like they are a long-lived race. But when you look at it from, like, well, what has pointy ears and an incredibly long lifespan, you come up with, as Flatus was saying, you want to do it? You want to say it?
That Spock is an elf.
You get this guy right here. He's got pointed ears and he's got a long lifespan. And so, are the Vulcans a space elf race? Why are we
totally
not?
Space elves? Totally space elves.
Space elves coast to coast.
I'll throw Spock up there for a little bit longer. I agree. Like, and it's not just that the two defining characteristics that we've mentioned so far, which is the pointed ears and the longevity, but also the attitude of the Vulcans. And you know what I didn't mention in the pre-show at all, because I wanted to shock you guys and surprise you all. But what about the Romulans? Because the Romulans and the Vulcans in Star Trek are identical. They're basically two of the same species. I've got a dog over here, like, elbowing or nosing me. Sorry.
You just hit my dog.
Space elves.
Oh,
but so Romulans and Vulcans?
Well, on Twitter, people were already, like, naming out each race, and they're like, the Romulans are the Dark Elves, and then then Spock was be like the High Elf version of the other elves. So I can see Romulans as Dark Elves. I can kind of see it. I get it. Elves in space.
Yeah, right. And that's what Snowman Wookie is saying, that space elves make it sound like they live in space and not on a planet. Agreed. We'll have to amend that a little bit. But they're so how do I say it? That they're elves in science fiction as opposed to fantasy, kind of, sort of. All I mean is that when you first meet Vulcans, they are spacefaring, flying through the cosmos, and not fighting dragons with swords and bows on a planet. They've got their phasers and their Vulcan death pinch.
But they've also got that, we have to hold back our technology from everybody else because you just can't handle it attitude.
In watching Star Trek Voyager, Tuvok is always like, I have to keep my emotions in check because an angry Vulcan is just like this destroyer of worlds type thing, when it's like, dude, just get a grip. You don't need...
There are elves in the Spelljammer setting.
There are, but Spelljammers is such a...
Just Spock was a Spelljammer elf.
Okay.
That's what I was getting at. It's.
Did you look through any of the Spelljammer
stuff? I played Spelljammer. Give me a break.
Horrible.
It was terrible. It was really bad.
I had forgotten about Spelljammer up until this moment.
Seriously, I think everybody tried to forget it.
Didn't they?
It is the reason I stopped dating somebody.
Because they love that, and you were just like, I can't do this.
It was his favorite setting, and I think that relationship lasted 3 terrible weeks.
Oh.
And it was 3 straight weeks of trying to play Spelljammer, and I was like, I can't do this with you. No.
Hold on, I'm gonna see how vast is the power of the internet.
Bad touch.
Here we go.
Bad touch. Bad touch.
Here, here is an elf ship from Spelljammer.
Oh god.
Yeah. Anyway, so not to focus so much on this bad Spelljammerness. Essential character.
They even call it a warbird.
You guys coming up. Okay, so other characteristics of the elves. Tall, lithe, thin, graceful, elegant. The way they move. I agree with all of those, except I never envisioned my elves being tall. I think that
It's because you're short.
I think that in the original Dungeons and Dragons, the elves were shorter than humans.
Yes, they were.
And I don't know what happened. There's this... All of a sudden, the tables got flipped, and now elves are taller than humans by quite a bit, 6 inches, almost a foot.
Well, they're always skinny as hell, though.
Yes, that was one of the things.
What if that elf? Plump? Rotund? Voluptuous? Curvy?
I would even take healthy.
It's a healthy elf.
A healthy elf.
I want to look like an elf, but I don't look like an elf.
Right.
I just want to put on some fucking pointy ears, but
Yeah, I don't think I could ever, even in original Dungeons and Dragons, pass the health height requirements.
For an elf?
I Google it.
Barely there.
I Google image search curvy elf.
But
I cannot share.
Why did you do that? Did you turn safe search off too? What are you, an internet noob?
Listen, first of all, my safe search is always off. All right, a single male that lives by himself.
2 things. 1, don't ever have your husband. You know what Tamlin Googled once? With safe search off, most likely.
Oh no! Now
we were discussing that drink you have.
No, we talked about that on the show. We? Yeah, it's recorded on the internet now. Everybody can go and look at it.
Yes, what my husband said out loud last week.
What did I say? Oh, yeah. Can we just move on and talk about?
All right.
No, really. Can we just talk about us? Because we're here talking about are they tall? Are they graceful? Are they elegant? And we can argue about the height. Because I think that that's a matter that we all have our own opinion on. Are they taller than humans? Are they shorter than humans? Does it depend on what type of elf they are? Because I think that in some circumstances it might. You might have some elves that are taller than humans, and in the same fantasy setting, you have elves that are shorter than humans. Simply just because, like, you can look at humans. You can look at human society on Earth, and you can see that I'm not going to be stereotypical, but the facts don't lie. Asians are shorter than Northern Europeans. So there are different types of populations that are separate, even though they're the same race. So I could see that being a valid, consideration, that elves don't all have to be taller than humans or shorter than humans. That it can be a variable along a scale. But I do hold that they have to have that grace and that ability to move about in a room and just have that elegance about the way they move.
They're also pretty. Even the ugliest elves are prettier than you. And they know
Prettier
it.
than me?
No, just you in general, like royal you. Everybody watching, everybody listening.
Except Flatus. He's a dwarf.
He's a dwarfable.
I was just gonna. I'm like, Flatus, you're a dwarf, and elves and dwarves do not mix.
Whee!
Will they blend though?
That was a landmark joke, wasn't it?
No, it's a thing. There's a whole thing called Will It Blend?
Yeah, she essentially just said, let's put elves and dwarves into a blender and hit the on switch, see what happens.
I found a website called Will It Waffle.
Waffle. Sorry.
It's okay, I like waffles.
Okay.
Alright. So this is one of the other ones that we had a little bit of debate about as a defining characteristic, about being in tune with nature. Do we see that as an essential part of being an elf in any sort of fantasy setting?
I
do. So it's really hard for me to.
Or GTFO.
Damn!
So like the Elves of Norath.
Well,
so the Elves of Norath, they're building with marble and gold and materials
was
like
adorable. But it had lots of water and like trees and planters and like greens and colors of nature.
Silas, Flatus, where are you at with the whole? Do they have to be in tune with nature? Do they have?
No.
They don't have that sort of connection?
I don't think they have to. I think they can, but I don't think it's a prerequisite to be an elf.
Alright. Flatus? you just no opinion on it?
It's because I guess there's wood elves and they are in tune with nature, and there's high elves, which I think they would be more in tune with magic. I mean, maybe nature on a different scale, maybe more knowledge than nature. I guess it just depends. I guess in the terms of EverQuest Next, I would think they'd be more in tune with magic, just based on what I've seen so far.
They've already said that the Elves of Norath are very much more in tune with the cosmos and magic than they are with nature. And that's kind of like, if you think that elves have to have like that sort of bond with nature to be elves, it's a departure from that kind of, essential characteristic. Me personally, I think that just like the height thing, that this is one of those things that exists on a scale. However, I always, if I was going to, I wouldn't consider it an essential characteristic, but if I was going to write, if I was going to do my own creation type stuff, I would make it a key characteristic for me personally. So Lucy, I'm going to throw up a bunch of the screenshots that we have of the different in tune with nature elf cities from different movies and MMOs. The first one we have. Oh, I'm going to butcher it. Kelethin. Is it Kelethin? From the original EverQuest, for to Fate Arc. And then the next one up. This is. It looks like a screenshot from the Lord of the Rings movie, and this is the Forest of Lothlamar, something like that. It's where Gladriel is. Forget the name of it. I'm trying to retain so much knowledge right at the moment that I'm losing a little bit of it. The next one up, because it's not an EverCast show if Tamlin doesn't talk about Vanguard a little bit. This is a screenshot from Celebre, depending on how you want to pronounce it. As you can see in the background, there is a building that is attached to part of the tree. There are ramps that are connecting all of the different trees, and there are platforms built around the trees. It's basically a tree city. And here is a screenshot from Kelethin from EverQuest 2. And those are all elf cities. Those aren't like just, random human cities that are also happen to be, in the trees. They're all essentially elf cities. If elves love nature so much, why aren't they druids? That's funny because
they are druids though.
Yeah, when I was trying to think of, and I don't like making the WoW comparisons, but in Warcraft, originally it was Night Elves on one side and Tauren on the other side, and those were the only two races. So you had the two races that are essentially most in tune with nature that could also be druids. In every single RPG I've ever played, basically, elves or druids. Like, it has never been a forbidden class for them, even in the oldest, I think, could somebody in chat or Tanley correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure elves could always be druids. And going off the whole magics, like wizards things, nothing says that wizard magic isn't in tune with nature. You can still use the elements: water, earth, fire, air. Those are nature.
That's a shaman.
In WoW, yes.
Well, even in other, I was thinking back to Vanguard. The problem with Vanguard is Vanguard had 19 different races and 15 different classes. So trying to memorize the race class matrix of what races could be what classes was damn near impossible. So I don't know for certain what races could be dwarves and which ones couldn't, but yeah.
Everybody drink.
I was trying to think of that, but yeah, a lot of times like shamans are like elemental type people. They all have attunement with like the different elements, and druids are more in tune with nature that's separate from the elements. I don't know.
I feel like druids were more in tune with vegetation and animals sort of nature because they could shapeshift into animals and they had that healing thing. But I still think shamans were also in tune with nature. Like, I don't think that they lost that flavor and became book mages.
Yeah. And then yes, they have said that obviously in EverQuest Next the elves are going to have different subsects. The Tyrdal were one of them that they talked about being the Dark Elves, and I think they've hinted at it, but they haven't come out right and said it. But they're not going to have a Wood Elf type race at the beginning of the launch of EverQuest Next, but that's something that we will see later on. Anybody back me up on this? That's something that they've hinted at, but they haven't outright said. Anybody?
Bueller.
Anybody in chat? Just because I know they're a little bit behind, but if you can help, please. There's more of you than there are of us.
Well, see, the thing is like this is what I remember, but that's not like if I could remember exactly like what workshop show or what landmark live show it was where I heard them say that, then I would put that in the index and be like, okay, that's where I heard it from. But see, I don't have that index, so I don't know if that's me just imagining it or if that's what they've come out right and said. I do know that they've said 8 races at launch, and they haven't backed off from that, and they haven't talked about any subsect of elves other than the Norath elves and the the dark elves. We will.
I agree. They've never mentioned the wood elves. They just never. I mean, they've mentioned the tiered owl and the regular elves, but never like, oh, there's these wood elves too out in the woods that defected or whatever. They're just not part of us. But that doesn't mean that they will eventually appear, or that maybe they're in a tree city bound by magic that no one can see.
Oh my god, I would be so excited if, like, I'm not sure which edition of D&D it was, but if they came out with feral elves that were like, well, feral, in the name. It's descriptive. But I hope they're all like uncouth and like barbaric and
hold on. I'm gonna grab an Elf Quest elf from the Wolf Rider clan. There's my boy Cutter. This was one of the only comics that I grew up reading that I really, really liked, because superheroes I just never could get into the same way that other of my friends could get into superhero comics. I was really into EverQuest, and so I've got a whole bunch of them. But EverQuest definitely had that feral tribe of elves. Elf-Quest.
You keep saying EverQuest.
I'm sorry, I'm messing that up. So yeah, there was Cutter from the Wolf Rider clan, and they were definitely feral.
That looked like Sabretooth.
And in Dungeons and Dragons, there was definitely a Forgotten Realms setting had wood elves, and it also had not feral elves, wild elves, and they were considered the only true elves, and all the other races were kind of not necessarily true elves. Now,
Wood elves in EverQuest have always been my favorite because Kelethin. I mean, come on, you can live in an acorn. Who doesn't want that? But I really hope that they do something different.
Phenomenal cosmic powers. Space.
They're elves. They can fold. It's fine.
They fold up. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, they compact for storage.
So one of the
part of
things
that graceful thing, but I hope that they take elves in a different direction, so it's not, I mean, they took dark elves in a different direction, so maybe wood elves will go in a different direction.
I expect that it'll be an awesome rallying call later on in the game. The other thing to notice about the Elf Quest elves, one, they are shorter than humans by a significant amount. They come to like the waist of a typical human. And that's only the Wolf Rider clan. The other races the other clans of elves are taller. And 2, all elves have 3 fingers, not 4 fingers like a human. And I'll pull up Cutter again so that you can look at his hand that he's holding up. He's not making like a claw. That's like his 3 fingers and his thumb. I always thought that was neat because in one point in the story, he cuts off the finger of a human and then jokes about it later on with his other elf friends. And it was like, he had one too many anyway. Alright, so essential characteristics. The one that I completely overlooked, I didn't even think about it, but it's their arrogance. Are elves essentially arrogant?
Yes.
Are you sure? You sound like you might have some doubt in there.
Even if they're not like necessarily arrogant, I feel like all elves have that little bit of like, oh, honey, sweetie, that's nice. Look at what you did.
That's what happens when you're essentially undying.
And you're just nice. Like way cooler than everybody else.
I mean, even Galadriel has like a couple of moments of crazy,
Well, I think that if you read the stories, that the other elves looked down on Arwen because she was agreeing to marry Aragorn Strider in Lord of the Rings.
Doesn't she have to give up her immortality for that?
She does. Well, all elves, in the break video, I think that it will talk about that. It's to remain in the Western world or the Eastern world. I think it's the Eastern world. All elves would eventually lose their immortality. All of them had to leave to go to the Western Isles or give up their immortality. And so it wasn't that she was exactly agreeing to give up her immortality. She was just saying that it was more important to stay with him than it was to leave with her people.
Yeah.
I think they all definitely have that little bit of like either I know too much for you, or you can't possibly understand what I've been through. Because being long-lived, you've gone through some shit.
You don't know the power of the elf side?
Yeah, and that's funny is because like all of the trying to think, did Elrond come off as arrogant? Did Gladriel, you said that you felt like she came off as a little bit arrogant?
Well, no, but like there was a little bit of like for example, in the movie specifically, because I'm not gonna go into the books, I'm just gonna talk about the movie specifically. Like in the gift giving scene, there is that tiny little bit of like, oh, here you go, here's a little token, don't die.
No, beyond that, and now at last it comes, you will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord, you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth, and all shall love me and despair. That's a little snotty. Just a little snotty. And arrogant.
I don't think love
I will
and
have this
despair.
power, and you are gonna love it.
Well, that's because she was recognizing two things. One, she was recognizing that one, she already had one of the lesser rings of power, like she had one of the 3 elf rings, and two, she knew that as she had even more power and the one ring added to it, that it would corrupt her.
It's true.
To be evil, because that's what it does. And so she was just recognizing the fact that if she had 2 of the rings, that she would be like, she would just rule the world. And yeah. I don't know.
Everybody wants to rule the world.
I've LARPed a lot of vampires, so I can kind of see where you get that arrogance from, where like if you know that you're essentially never going to die of old age, does it change the way that you behave? And I'm sure that it certainly does. Like you're more like you're more free to make, you know, decisions based on like a long-term perspective, because it's like all I have to do is live and all this wonderful stuff will happen to me. And I think that that was one of the arguments that they made in Lord of the Rings, is that like the elves are like such a slow moving race because they don't ever feel like they're in a rush.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that, and then the Castithans and the Blood Elves. Not talking just about the Castithans. I've got the picture. If I can find it.
They're a little bit more brutal than the Blood Elves.
The Castithans are, I would say, a little bit more brutal than the Blood Elves, but I think that both of those two character sets that we're talking about, the Castithans and Defiance and the Blood Elves from World of Warcraft, they certainly have arrogance in spade. They are all, you know, if they are not rich and fabulously wealthy, it's because they are temporarily displaced of their millions of, you know, to borrow from that quote, that they believe that only that they should have all the best in life, and if they don't have the best in life, it's because some other thing took it from them, type stuff. I had a World of Warcraft Night Elf too, but I don't really see them coming. Well, I don't know. Illidan comes across as a little bit arrogant. So there's that.
I know. I think
But I
night elves
love
are.
him.
You think what?
I think night elves are crazy.
They're crazy?
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
I don't know. Lucy's our resident Alliance player.
She is. But based in the lore books, a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
I never read the lore. I just played a night elf.
See, and that's the thing is, I've read some of the lore, but not enough to make an established opinion on the Night Elves because I've never read the Circle of or what is it, the Lore of Eternity or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget some night elves, are really evil. Illidan.
Misunderstood.
Okay.
Sure.
Come on, that poor guy.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? He is a little misunderstood. His lovely, beautiful leader, the Night Elf's sister. not so much. Well, not sister.
Was that his sister or that was his brother's girlfriend?
Brother's
Brother.
Brother's
Yeah.
girlfriend.
Because they were,
Brother's girlfriend.
yeah. I can't think if they were married or not.
She went bad nuts and killed people, like killed guards and stuff to set him free. She killed innocent people to set him free.
You're talking about Maya of Shadow Song.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I got you. All right, so the last little characteristic that we have written down is essentially part of what an elf is. And the elves of Norath, this is one of the things that we hear the most often about them, is that they're magical. They have magic in their nature, whether it's a passive, latent ability to use magic or just a natural affinity towards it. They have magic available to them that is more difficult than it is to other races. We're all in agreement. Do we ever run into non-magical elves in any setting?
Fantasy setting?
Well, where can you think of a non-fantasy setting where elves don't have access to magic? Because
I think some. I could be wrong, but I think there's some Shadowrun lore there. Oh no! Wait, no, it's not Shadowrun. What was it called? It's an obscure RPG. Don't worry about it.
See, I don't remember that much about Shadowrun. What I remember about Shadowrun is that there was an event that happened in the world, and there were humans, and the humans morphed or they transformed from whatever they were into elves and ogres and dwarves. And so, I don't know if that made them opened up their latent magical powers or not.
The Eldar from 40K.
Yeah, you know what? I really didn't look into that. I should have, about the Eldar. Did the Eldar in 40K have magic or not? Because I know that magic in Warhammer Fantasy, there were, if you played in a fantasy battle, you had to, if you tried casting a spell, you had to roll a dice to see if the magic was successful because the magic could turn against you or fail or stuff like that.
Yeah. They had technology. I don't know if that probably. Shadow. Let's see. Legendary said in Shadowrun. Shadowrun 2. They're different.
Yeah, but Shadowrun's a whole different thing for magic. It's like a whole different thing because there were waves. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, Prophet. Eldar do have magic. Well,
I know that. See, the funny thing is that they talk about the orcs in 40K, and the orcs in 40K are the most powerful psychic force in the universe because if they believe something can happen, it can happen, and that's so if they drop their bolt blaster or their rifle or whatever, and some other race tries to pick it up, that thing won't work at all because the only reason it works is because the orc believes it will work. I know that we're now talking about orcs and not elves, but I thought that was a very interesting take on magic in psychic magic for the orcs. So if they have that type of magic for the orcs, I'm sure that they have some for the Eldar because, I mean, they're space elves.
Orcs have ears.
Let people in chat just correct us. They'll probably tell us like if we're wrong or not, or if we're right.
They usually do.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid some of the more obscure legends and lore, especially from Tolkien. Like the orcs are twisted trolls, or not twisted trolls, twisted elves. And if you look at it, like in Warcraft, there were the elves. And then the elves got twisted into the satyr and into the naga, and then the elves, like part of the elves split in half, and that's why you have the night elves and the high elves, and then the high elves got decimated, and now you have the blood elves, and you can take a fantasy story and you can spin it a whole lot of different ways to like access to magic or not having access to magic. But we're really thinking about like the key characteristic, like an essential characteristic. If a character in a story does not have magic available to them, do you feel like they're less elf-like or more elf-like?
I'm not sure I care.
I don't think that magic is essential, but I think having something that they have mastered because of their longevity over other people is sort of like essential thing. Like, for example, Vulcans, who are space elves, we've already decided, #confirmed. They don't have magic, but they do have like incredible technology.
I would like, after watching, like, if you just watch the original series with Spock, you might not think that they're magical, but watching Star Trek Voyager with Tuvok, you'd be like, the Vulcans have like, that's straight up magic.
They do have like the whole mind meld thing and the Vulcan nerve pinch and the.
Well, no, and they talk about their psychic energy and they're maintaining their balance to keep their psychic powers from going ballistic type stuff, and it's like a regular occurrence for Tuvok. And so that's where you're like, why don't you just call it magic? I know that it's supposed to be like science fiction because it's Star Trek, but really it's magic. And then that gets into the whole splitting hairs of, is psychic power magic or not? Who knows? That's a very debatable topic. So right up against the first hour of the show being done, we're going to take a break. We have 2 videos for you. The first one is a video by CCP Grey. If you don't, I think I've mentioned CCP Grey before. Like, CCP Grey, like, all of the videos he's done are incredibly informative and entertaining at the same time, and so they're a great source. Like, whatever he's talking about, you might learn a little bit. The one that we grabbed first is the Lord of the Rings Mythology Explained Part 1. He's done a 2-parter. We're just going to do the first one. And then we might come back like next week or the week after when we're doing the show and do Part 2. And then the second one, Flatus, where did you find this one?
Internet.
Did you? What did you search for to come up with this one? I gotta know.
I know Dungeon Bastard, so if you do not know who he is, Dungeon Bastard's great. He'll teach you about Dungeons and Dragons, and in this episode, he goes over the race, the elves, and I will leave it at that. Okay.
All right. Well, you want to kind of us out, or you want to say something, kind of?
I was waving because I know that we're going on break. About how long do we before we come back? So people that are watching know how long they have in case they don't like to sit around for the videos. Because I know some people like to get up and stretch around, or need to take the dogs out, or
make TT.
It's like it's 6.5 to 7 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah, they have to go make TT. All right, everybody in chat, time to go make TT if you don't need to stay here.
Well, that's Lucy. That's extra funny because you have to remember that the first time we did a break video during the between the 2 hours of the show, we had oh my God, I am forgetting everything's name today. Who did the break video? It was the Scottish.
Scott. Oh, the Scott.
Your boyfriend. Your best friend for
Oh,
life.
Tobrin. Oh.
Tobrin! Oh my god, guys, throw me a leg here. Or throw me a leg. Throw me a bone.
Well, first you're like the Scotsman. I'm like the Scot. I mean, the guy from like I thought you meant the guy from Seattle who was like wearing a kilt and playing a bagpipe.
No. That's extra funny because the first time we had a break video played between the 2 hours of the show, Tobrin shot a video for us. And he was talking about like, okay, well, all the regular hosts are,
probably pooping.
Pooping.
Yeah. It's true. He did say that. Like on his video, he's like, they're probably pooping, and I was like, oh, good. Well, hi. Wait, real quick, did you refer to him as my lifetime boyfriend before I?
Yes.
All right, just make sure.
That's how you've been.
It's okay. We all know he wears a skirt in the relationship.
True.
Oh,
True.
poor Tobin. All right. So we have break videos. There's about 7 minutes worth of break videos. Someone should camp us out, and we will be back.
I can do it. Kailas can do it.
Wait. Camping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.